Hello, Shafi.
Heroes, I wanted to ask you about what are your thoughts on like the impeachment of Donald Trump?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good thing. I think it's based.
All right, and I guess like the second question I wanted to ask, what are your thoughts on the capacity for like a planned economy? Since like attempts at planned economies usually happened in very developing nations like the USSR, Mao's China, and they eventually had to revert back to a pricing system. So, what are your thoughts on moving immediately from, say, a capitalist system to a planned economy, since we do have the technology to facilitate something like that?
I think
I just wanted to
it's
know what your thoughts on.
very unlikely. There might be a bunch of issues to that. I think that the best way to move leftism forward at this point in time is probably to do it incrementally and step by step, and not move from having a private ownership market run economy with commodity production to going directly from that to collectively, centrally planned economy without any markets and stuff. That seems like quite the jump there.
Well, I don't think we can go immediately from capitalist society to an immediately decommodified economy. It's very likely that there'd be like a system of labor vouchers, for example, or even just the nationalization of various industries to the point in which it's centralized so that we can implement, say, a planned economy with algorithms and what have you. I'm not like a communizer. I don't think we can immediately go from capitalist bourgeois society to an immediate like decommodified economy in its entirety.
Yeah, that seems incredibly unlikely to me. I think that markets are probably gonna stay around for a while longer, for good and for bad. But you know what? Maybe far in the future, maybe we'll have
But it,
computers just giving us
okay,
things.
so can I ask then, how can a market socialist society, I would dispute the label socialist, but we'll move past that for now. How would that go from being market socialist, in which people work at like different firms and there's competition,
Mm-hmm.
there's nationalization of some sectors, immediately, well, not immediately, but how would it move towards a decommodified economy, for example?
Well, it is a direct step because for a whole range of reasons, right? Number one, we have a fundamental shift in the power relations within a society. We put more power in the hands of regular workers, put less power in the hands of capitalists. If we have a completely market socialist economies, capitalists, at least as we look at them today, would not exist. So that's a fundamental, like, sort of cultural and power change that occurs that leans itself more towards having a planned economy. We will see a overall just move in the Overton window to the left because market socialism is further left than we have right now. And the closer your end desired goal is to what sort of like culturally and generally accepted as, yeah, political values in a society, the easier it's going to be for you to achieve it. We will also see that a general sort of understanding or reorganization or spirit within a nation or within the world where we realize that the interests of working people are prioritized higher than they are right now. Fundamentally, that's how market socialism does, right? It prioritizes regular people, regular workers, over capitalists, which is something that has not been the case for a really long time.
Well, the problem is fundamentally, the problem I have with that is that the shift from current like non-co-op society to a society like full of co-ops
Mm-hmm.
is about as radical, I think, a shift as a society from like capitalist society to a planned economy with a system of labor vouchers, which are swapped out with currency, for example, or even cybernetic planning, which I'm not really on board with. I think they're about as likely as each other. I think you say that
So,
moving from capitalist society in which the means of production are held privately, quote unquote, to a
wait, what do you mean by
planned
quote
economy,
unquote?
because co-ops are still private property fundamentally. Like they're owned by the employees of the firm, but it is still private property fundamentally, unless
Wait, okay,
like there
hold on. Okay,
any.
there's so much to unwrap here. So, number one, the notion that, a society in which we expand an already existing business structure and sector of economy and make it more generalized and more popular and the dominant form of production, the statement that that is equally likely as getting rid of markets, getting rid of currency, fundamentally changing our entire mode of production, the way we allocate resources, the way we designate levels of wealth, the way we allocate products and services. Saying that these two things are equally likely to happen, to me, seems incredibly irrational. But even if it's still private property, something that always like hasn't really concerned me that much is labels when it comes to political pragmatism. So I don't care whether or not you would label market socialism as socialism. I don't care whether or not you would label worker democracy and co-ops as still having private property. What I do care about is what that means for the people who work within those, communities or that work within those systems. And both of those systems, despite whatever you want to call them, are a significant improvement to what we have today. So nitpicking and saying, oh, that's still private property just feels pointless.
Well, the reason why I would still not be content with a market socialist society is because a lot of the fundamental internal mechanisms, like crises, for example, are still perpetuated. I haven't really heard like an answer to the question of unemployment because for labor to be competitive in the first place, there needs to be frictional unemployment. At the end of the day, a lot of these mechanisms, which are fundamental problems with the capitalist mode of production, are still preserved.
I would say more market mode of
So
production than capitalist form of production. But that
yeah,
still is not a
I guess
reason why, because even then, with the thing you just laid out, 100%, there will still be frictional employment. I agree with you. However, it's still an improvement from what we have today because it's more likely that we will pass policies that benefit working class people who are under frictional unemployment than we are right now under capitalism. You still have not provided a reason why you think that's a bad idea. You've just pointed out a flaw which is less than in today's model, under my model, under market socialism. But you need to provide like a negative to it, not just an issue that still exists, but to a lesser degree.
well, just having people like on welfare, I don't think is like because I'm a communist. I fundamentally want to see the negation of capitalism in its entirety. So I'm a lot less. I don't know. I'm not as gradual as you are. I think there are periods in which like very radical shifts are likely to happen and probably going to be a lot more effective. We can't exactly like Keynesian policy our way into the abolition of the commodity form, for example.
I think we
So,
make it more likely, and I would prefer people to be on a welfare state while they're unemployed than for them not to be in a welfare state while unemployed.
well, definitely, I think, but like it's a welfare state wouldn't be unique to market socialism fundamentally.
I still don't feel like you've pointed out a single issue with market socialism that is worse or that further like inhibits further leftist
Well,
progression than
no,
what we have right
not
now in
that
the
it's
status quo.
worse. I've never said it's worse.
So
I've
what's your
just,
problem with it then?
well, so like the mechanism that governs crisis, for example.
Yeah, but that's the same under
I
today's
don't
system,
know.
right? But it's still there's
Well,
still
yeah,
improvements
yeah.
in a
I
wide range of
understand
it.
that I understand that there's improvement,
Uh-huh.
but as a communist, I'm not necessarily looking for improvement because if we're looking for
Wait, what are
improvement,
you looking for
we
then if not
would
improvement?
no, I'd look for the negation of capitalism, which I think is
This is
it's not idealism, but I don't know. I have many problems with market socialism. I don't think you would consider problems
see
per se.
this is the issue I find with a lot of people that self-identify as communists is that you like the idea of communism for the sake of communism or socialism or whatever in itself. While the way we should be looking at politics, the way we should be looking at political systems and political advocacy is using whatever system, whatever framework is best to make improvements. I am a socialist because I want to make the world a better place. I don't want to make the world a better place because I'm a socialist.
the the reason why I seek communism is because I seek the freedom of the individual. I guess market socialism is a step. Well, I'm very revolutionary. I don't know if you are as revolutionary as I am, but I don't see co-ops necessarily as very liberating. I think that
Okay, I'm gonna have
in
to take issue with that right
more
away. So if you don't see the difference in a firm right now that is run from the top down, which basically functions as a dictatorship in which you have no control over the people above you that enact authority down towards you, where you have no say in the compensation you receive for the products of your labor, and a
well, okay,
system
I
in which
contest.
there is a democratic union of workers who decide how the firm is run and who is given positions of power above them, in which they have an influence over where the product of their labor goes, is completely like it's absurd coming from somebody who
Well,
identifies as like a leftist.
well, fundamentally, under co-op system, you're basing like the entire economy based off of competition. I
But that's an issue
know
with
you don't.
markets.
Fundamentally, I think that we can have a co-op sector like moving towards like say the lower stage of communism, but I don't think we can like expand the co-op sector to the point in which like the capitalist class is going to look at it and then like be fine. I think there is definitely going to be a period in which there will be revolutionary action to a degree, be it from general strikes or even like civil war. I'm not exactly an advocate for say um, I don't know, Maoist insurrection.
Okay, but cool.
But
Yeah, I fine. If that happens, if the capitalist class uses like extra legal action to block the progress of the what the democratic majority of a country has decided, then yeah, absolutely. Let's have mass strikes. Sure. 100%. I agree with you. And none of this has to do, or none of this is an argument against us moving towards market socialism.
I think it's just that we have different views on the immediacy of these things.
I mean,
I
I
don't know, like,
agree. It seems like I want to work off and talk about the next pragmatic step in achieving change, and you seem hyper focused on something that is so far outside of what is feasibly pragmatically possible within today's political paradigm. Um,
well, I think I'm looking at the ends, and you're looking more at the means.
yeah, wouldn't it be reasonable to like look at the steps of the process in a chronological order rather than saying that, hey, your means aren't as good as my ends? That doesn't make any sense.
My logic is that I seek the absolute like liberation of humanity in its like most absolute form, and that would take the form of communism. Now, I'm not like divorced from looking at the ways in which we can, I don't know, have I don't know, state management in some sectors and more market-based management in others. But I think that I don't
I
know.
still I fail to see what our contention or what a disagreement is here. Like what's
Well, I
going on.
think you're fundamentally a lot more reformist in your worldview because you see us moving towards a socialist mode of production through expanding a sector. I don't want to say capitalist because you hate that term, but
I mean,
a
no,
more
it's a status quo way of achieving change. Yeah, 100%. It's the optimal way of achieving change. It's what's gonna is most likely to have the best outcomes if it's done successfully, the least negative downsides. But if that proves impossible, if it ends up that the democratic will of the people isn't expressed in the way we run our governments, then yeah, 100%. Let's have mass strikes. Let's do whatever we want.
I mean, Venezuela has tried reformism, and Bolivia has tried reformism. I think you can, if we're talking about in the context of, say, I don't know, the United States or the United Kingdom, for example, I think
I just think
fundamentally,
it's really funny how we have come to the point in 2021 where leftists are doing who as well arguments to each other.
if you look at the way that the way reformism was attempted, like not even revolutionary action, but reformism was attempted and it was under constant threat. I think it just makes sense to go for revolution because even if like liberal democracies in South America were immediately couped when they started like I don't know getting workers' rights. So
Okay, I mean
fundamentally, I
we're not going getting anywhere here. This conversation feels
because
to me
like
like the embodiment of just
if
like virtue
you
signaling, to be honest.
because if you look at the way reformism has been tried across the third world, it's always been under threat by imperialism. So I think fundamentally, um, a lot of revolutions have been kept intact, like in say Cuba, for example,
Yeah, sure, and then go for
and
I agree with you. If the reformist path doesn't work, what's it called? If it is toppled by outside anti-democratic influences, then yeah, go for revolution. I never disagreed with this statement in Minecraft. I never disagreed with the statement that you should go for revolution. Never. And you saying that like a successful revolution is more likely and has less like negative consequences than, for example, a failed attempt at like reform. That's like that's it makes no sense. I don't see why so many leftists, just because they want to look radical, completely say, no, no reform, no political pragmatism, no working within the Overton window, no doing what we like. Or even, or they do believe that, but they just don't want to say it because they'll lose like cool points. I don't know. It just annoys me so much.